Just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. And sometimes we need somebody to lean on for a little bit of help with some hints or tips to do things better. And that's what we're here for, helpful hints and tips on how to get the most out of your music, whether you're playing guitar, piano, drums, or the most common instrument in the world, voice. Hi everybody, I'm Rolly from Rolly Max Music, and welcome to the latest in our series on music videos. Now before we get any further, just got to do a shout out to our sponsor, the Willow Ridge Community Association. Thank you so much guys for making this series of videos possible. Rolly Max Music has been located in the lower level of the Willow Ridge Community Hall for quite some time now. And we're happy to serve the community from our location here. We've been teaching music lessons at the studio the whole time. And now we're pleased to be serving the world because we've just started offering online lessons. So you don't even have to come to Calgary, let alone come down to Willow Ridge. You can take lessons from anywhere you like. Now, back to today's topic, singing. It's one of the most misunderstood instruments that's out there, even though it's the most common, because everybody has one. And maybe that's the problem. We've all got one, so we take it for granted. Now, if we treat our voice like an instrument, like the same way that we would treat the piano or the guitar if we're learning how to play it, then you'll find that you'll get a lot better results. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply the same principles that we use on other instruments to the voice. So starting with the golden rule of technique that we outlined in our very first in this series of videos, and that is take the easiest way out all the time. And that definitely applies to the voice as well. Now, part of the problem that people have with learning how to sing is that your instrument is used for a lot of other purposes. It's not just used for singing. As a matter of fact, with the other purposes that the parts of the body that form the voice are used for are the main things that they're used for. So the habit force makes us tend to lean towards the way we normally do things. And with singing, we're using the parts of our body in the voice in a more strenuous manner, so much like an athlete uses their muscles in a little bit more strenuous way than you do in regular life. We're going to use these particular parts of the body in a more involved way than we do in our day-to-day activities. So let's begin by doing an overview of the parts of the voice. So there's actually three main sections here. It starts with the lungs because everything depends on the air. So the lungs take the air that is needed to produce the voice. Then what happens is after we had a lung full of air, the air travels up the windpipe to the larynx or voice box, as it's commonly referred to, where the vocal cords are, and this air activates the vocal cords, gets them vibrating. So that's phase 2. And then phase 3 is amplification, because we have to hear what we're doing, right? So that is where the bones in the head and the chest vibrate to amplify the sound that we've made by blowing the air from the lungs onto the vocal cords. So we're going to start with the breathing, because breathing is a foundation of good singing. And just to give you an example, what my singing teacher used to always tell her students, she had this piano with a stack of books on it, and she used to say, your breath is to your voice like the piano is to the books. So if you imagine the piano suddenly disappears or we take it away, what happens to those books? And I know what's going through all your minds. Crash! They all ended up on the floor. And that's exactly what ends up with your voice when the breath disappears. So we want to prevent that from happening. So I'm going to go over proper breathing technique, and I'm going to use an analogy that should be easy enough to understand. So part of the problem with singing is even the best vocal instructors sometimes find it difficult to explain how you do the breathing, because it is the most difficult part of vocal technique. Now, going back to our golden rule of technique for all instruments, take the easiest way out all the time. So that generally means being loose and relaxed. Relax all your muscles. You know, when instruments you play with your hands, you let your hands go totally limp and not using any muscles, and then you move your fingers as little as possible to get the results, right? So that applies to most of the parts of the voice, but with the lungs, they are actually working harder than when we're not singing. So you might say, well, that's a contradiction. You're not really following the golden rule, because that's not the easiest way out, but it is when you put it all in context with everything else. Because if you make the lungs work harder and they're doing their job, then everything else flows and the rest of your body can be totally relaxed, which is the best way to project a really good sound when you're singing. So what we're going to do is we're going to compare the lungs to a big round balloon. So let's blow the balloon up full of air, and you got this big round balloon, and then what happens when you let go? Out goes all the air, and it's gone. You can't use it anymore. So if you take that deep breath and then do what feels natural, is just let go. Oh, air's gone already. And that didn't take very long. In fact, that took about half the time that it takes to sing the average vocal line. So it's like, okay, we got to keep it in there a little bit longer than that, right? So going back to the balloon analogy, if we take that same balloon and it's full of air, and instead of letting go fully, we just let go a little bit, make a nozzle out of the lip of the balloon there, then it goes out slower. And then what we can do with the other hand is we can squeeze the balloon and pressurize that air. So now not only is it coming out slower, but we're also increasing the air pressure, so it's coming out with more force. And if we can do this with the lungs, then we've got plenty of power and plenty of stability for having the vocal cords do their thing, right? Okay, now, if I were to say to you, quick, take a deep breath, what would you do? Probably this. And hold it, and you feel something tight down there, right? That's your diaphragm or your lung muscle. And then if you let go, now you don't feel that muscle anymore. So that's the muscle that's going to work. That's the one exception to the taking the easiest way out rule, but it allows us to take the easiest way out in everything else in singing. Now, if you'll notice, when I took a deep breath, I did this. You see how my chest rose? And that is the natural impulse when you're taking a deep breath, because the idea of taking a deep breath is you need to replenish the oxygen in your bloodstream, right? So let's say you just ran a marathon or a 100-yard dash, and it's like, oh, need oxygen in the bloodstream. So what happens by instinct is your lungs rise, and then they rise to meet the air coming in, because the capillaries, which are those blood vessels that take the oxygen out of your air in your lungs, they're located mostly in the top of your lungs. So that's all fine if you're an athlete, but what we want to do is we want to get more air in the lungs and hang on to it and pressurize it like that big round happy birthday balloon. See, if we raise our chest, now all of a sudden, see how my lungs are stretched far away from the diaphragm. So now we've got a long, thin balloon animal balloon. And of course, we didn't blow it up all the way because we want that little bit on the end for the puppy dog's tail, right? And if we squeeze that, nothing happens. So we want that big round balloon that we can squeeze, and then we put it under pressure. So the diaphragm, it's located right underneath the lungs and right over top of the stomach. It does both. It holds the air in and it squeezes to pressurize it, so that when it leaks up out the windpipe onto the vocal cords. We got the perfect pressure for singing. So how do we do that? So this is an explanation that I hope will help a lot of people the way it's helped me. And I didn't get this from any of my singing teachers. As a matter of fact, one of my university professors showed it to the class because you're expected to get up there and speak in public, and so you're supposed to be able to project your voice, right? But he hit on exactly the easiest way to explain how to get that kind of breath support so that you get the maximum pressure from the air in your lungs with the minimum effort. So if you put your hands in the spot that's right underneath the rib cage and above the hip bone, okay, that's right on the sides of your stomach, you can push in quite a bit. Now, if we think of the stomach as a ball of dough, we're making bread, okay, and so you're kneading the dough with your hands and then it comes out the sides, right? Well, what we're kneading the stomach with is the diaphragm. So the diaphragm pushes down. The stomach's got to go somewhere, right? So we push down, and you see how much my stomach expands, and well, what's filling that space on the other side? The lungs. So there's more air in the bottom of the lungs where we need it, right next to the diaphragm, and the diaphragm can grab it and then pressurize it, and it makes it that much easier for singing. So if you just take this one hint or tip and work with it, take that kind of breath, but make sure you're pushing your stomach out quite a bit. See how far my hand moves, and then hold it. Hold on for dear life. It's going to feel uncomfortable there, but then you relax the rest of your body, and then the sound just flows through you. And that's the way you get the best voice production. So thank you all again for watching these videos. I hope they've been of use to you. Keep watching our YouTube channel, or watch the Willow Ridge Community Association social media as they release each video in order. And yeah, I'm going to leave you with a little bit of Waylon and Willie here. Haven't done any country music in a while. Long time forgotten, dreams that just fell by the way. In a good life it promised, ain't what she's living today. Can you see my stomach move? Willie! But she never complains about the bad times or the bad things he's done, no. She just talks about the good times